Hey guys, Hutch here with a Touch of Hutch Auto Detailing, back with another Jeep video. So I have been doing a lot of suspension work on the Jeep, and this first picture that you see is of my pinion bearing that completely shattered within my rear differential. So it was easier for me to buy a used rear axle assembly, or the whole entire rear end, for my Jeep than to try to replace the pinion bearing, because I don't have the tools or the time or the expertise even to do that. So I went ahead and bought a axle assembly, or I'm not sure exactly what you call it, but it's that entire rear end assembly. And here in this video, I'm replacing the pinion seal right in front of that pinion bearing, and I'm just trying to seat it into place, and was hoping that the Gorilla Tape was the right circumference to fit on and then be able to tab it in place. I know it wasn't going to get the job completely done. A lot of people I've seen use PVC. I didn't have any PVC that would fit right over this, so I was just kind of tapping it in, hoping it would seat it in. And then what I did is used an extension, a socket extension, and just tapped it into place, and finally I was able to get it seated properly. So now that I was able to replace that seal, it's time to get everything out of the Jeep. And once I removed that whole rear end, I was able to see a few rust spots that I wasn't able to get to right above the upper control arm in the rear, which I replaced that upper control arm as well. And then once everything was out, this is what I was left with, just this empty space. So I ended up purchasing a 3-inch lift kit. So it's going to come with new struts, new springs. I bought all new brakes all the way around. And so this is going to be a video of me replacing the rear end. And so here is that rear end assembly, and I'm using those little dollies there just to line it up. And then I used a floor jack to raise it up. And so I was doing this by myself. It was quite a process. I've never done this before. It was fairly difficult to get it lined up, because there is if you can see here, the upper control arm that I replaced, you have to get that lined up perfectly with a hole on that rear end, and it fits right down in it, and then you slide a pin through that locks it into place. And so that's what this whole process was. And at the beginning, if you can see there to the left, there are those control arms, and I didn't have those connected. And I guess at first I thought that if I had those connected, that it would kind of hinder my movement and hinder where I was able to place that rear end, or limit the movement as I was jacking it up into place. And so after a while of fiddling around with it, I just ended up connecting those arms. You can see me kind of trying to tap it into place too, and that did seem to work. I got it into place, but after a while I did have to connect those control arms to be able to guide it up into place, and then was able to just get that hole matched up. The pins slid in. I did have to stick a screwdriver in to the opening to get that pin to slide in. If you've ever replaced these before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But doing it by myself was a bit of a process. Didn't have a second set of eyes to be able to line it up. But finally eventually I did get it done. So I didn't record a whole lot of it, but I got this bolt here in. So at first I started by just jacking it up, as you saw. But then what I did was I put these lower control arms on, connected those, and then was able to raise it up. That way it wasn't falling forward the whole time. As I mentioned, I bought new brakes, and by that I meant rotors and pads. And I did not plan on replacing the calipers, but on this passenger side I did have to replace the caliper because when I got it out and I was trying to push the piston back in to put the new pads on, the piston was seized and then it eventually broke. So it was to be expected, unexpected. A lot of unexpected things happened while working on this. So I just went ahead and got a new one. So now I'm just putting everything back together, putting some anti-seize on a few bolts that I can put anti-seize on. This is that rear sway bar, and then I just go ahead and torque it down. So I sped this up because, again, like the rear end of the Jeep, this was my first time doing this part, and these springs are a little bit taller than the stock because it's a lift kit. So the passenger end went in real easy, but what I found out is that sway bar that I tightened down, I should not have tightened down. I should have left it loose, and then I was able to angle the rear end down, fit the spring in. So a learning curve. This whole thing was a learning curve for me. So now I'm replacing the struts, and this is a rough country 3-inch lift kit, and I'm just again putting everything together, torquing it down, make sure it's on there nice and tight and safe. So here are the new brake rotors. They're the power stop brake rotors, and the pads as well. Got those for all 4 wheels. Yeah, about that. So the brake rotor wasn't fitting on, and I noticed that the e-brake was pretty rusted behind it, so I just kind of tried to move it around a little bit, and the whole thing came off. It was so rusted it came off. That was not part of something that I planned on replacing this time around, but in the future, I will, if I have the time and the money, I will go ahead and replace the e-brake. But at this time, it's not a high priority for me, so I just went ahead and took it off, and I will deal with that in the future. So now everything's back together. I'm ready to put the wheels on. There's a quick picture of what it looked like after I replaced everything. So now I have to put my wheel spacers back on, which I don't think are necessary now that I have the lift kit, but still kind of give the Jeep a nice stance. So I put them back on. I do like the way it looks. You guys will be able to see how it looks once I'm finished with the whole suspension video. But here's a video of everything back together. It really gave the entire rear end a nice refresh because I was able to get to the spots I wasn't able to get to with the PR15 and fix the rust. I was able to get the rear upper control arm replaced, painted everything in a black color, satin black color, and then there's just a bunch of new components. So it was a really good refresh for the entire suspension, really, here in the back, and then you'll see in another video in the front as well. So it was real nice to get the wheels back on finally after a few weeks, and then I'll get started in the front. So you guys will see that in the next video, so stay tuned for that video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.